What's up, everybody? You're very welcome along to this special emergency Anfield Agenda podcast. I'm currently joined by Jack Gill and I'll shortly be joined by Steve Bland. And we're going to be looking at what the ramifications of this European Super League could be and what it could impact on not just the English game, but the wider football family. As always, we do want to hear from you guys, and your opinions are important to us. So keep your comments coming, keep your chat coming. But look, Jack, I'll come straight over to you, mate, because I've had hours and hours and hours to get this off my chest. As a Liverpool fan right now, how are you feeling?
Heartbroken, mate. I did the Monday Sports podcast earlier, and me and the lads, we had an angry rant because it was so fresh in minds at that point in time. But I'm just disappointed, mate, to be treated how us football fans have been treated in the last 24 hours is disgusting. It's sickening. And to see some of the quotes that have been put out by the owners and board members of these top six clubs, where we're being told that we're just legacy fans as they've labelled us, and the prime importance of football is money and maximum profit rather than the future good of the game is just a disgrace, Craig, and I can't believe we have let the game get to this point. And I'm in a situation where I'm a Liverpool fan. We've spoken for years about, the slogan, "You'll never walk alone." We've spoken about "This means more." We've spoken about, loads of different slogans and how the club reflects the feelings of the city, the supporters, and everyone individually at the club. But actually, we've seen the opposite of that, because, without the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City, the Super League still would have happened. Without Arsenal and Tottenham, the Super League still would have happened. But, the thought of the fact that Liverpool and Manchester United have been two of the main parties fighting for this is just absolutely disgraceful. And, Bill Shankly will be spinning, absolutely turning in his grave at this, because this goes against absolutely everything that him and everybody else stands for.
Lovely to see the Blue Boys Network in as well, as always, showing their support, and proper football fans don't want any part of this, lads, and I know you don't either. So thank you to our Everton supporting friends there as well. I can see Steve Bland is just coming in now. I'm going to add him into the podcast. Here he goes. Mr. Bland, how are you, sir? What's your gut reaction, mate? Not to the game, fuck the game. What's your reaction to the Super League? I don't know if Steve can hear me or not. Steve, can you hear us?
It's definitely his weekly mic problems that he has before we go live every week.
Anyway, I'll have my say on this for a second, Jack. I mean, you spoke there about legacy fans. That term just sums it all up, doesn't it? It just shows us that they don't understand what it means. Legacy fans, you mean the lifeblood of the game, those who put the club where it is, those who came before us and will hopefully come after us, those who've given their heart and soul, who've traveled around the world home and away, who've done everything they can, dug deep at times when they couldn't afford to get shirts for the kids or buy television subscriptions as it kept getting more expensive. You mean actual fans? It's not a franchise, John W. Henry.
Craig, some of the best moments of my life have been because of this football club. Some of the best moments of my life have been in competitions that they now want to get rid of because it doesn't earn them as much money, because they don't have the control over it. It's a disgrace. The amount of money I've spent on that football club to be told I'm just a customer and not a supporter. I'm distraught first and foremost, but I'm angry. I'm enraged. There's so many, negative things that I can use to describe this, because, I just can't believe this is what football has become. And, the game that we all love has been torn from its roots and torn away from us. And, we've let billionaires take control. And, it's disastrous, because I spoke at the start of this UK coronavirus pandemic. I spoke about how important football was to my life, in a time where we really missed everything, really. We weren't able to do anything, and football is huge for mine and many others' mental health. But to have that stripped away from us now by, the owners of my own football club, it's awful, Craig. It really is, and you know, I am honestly just so upset by it.
Steve, you're usually the voice of reason when it comes to us on these podcasts. I mean, somebody with a journalistic background, somebody who has great contacts in the industry, but most importantly, mate, somebody who is a lifelong Red. How are you feeling right now? Are you feeling let down by your owners?
Oh, goodness. I mean, so many things to say, aren't there? Not even quite sure where to start. Yeah, massively let down. I feel duped because I've told a lot of people, and I've banged the drum for FSG, and I've said, you know, these guys get it. They get the club, they get the city, they get the people. You know, they get the history, they get the, you know, everything about it. And actually, it turns out they don't. It turns out that they're just the same as all the rest of them. Just like, you know, people have been trying to tell us, and we didn't listen, did we? But yeah, I mean, there's a few things, you know, above and beyond kind of probably what you guys have already been talking about. I was really amazed tonight that Klopp said he only found out about it yesterday. That was extraordinary for me. Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, I heard them talk about it on 5 Live earlier, and they said, and Anna Foster, the presenter, asked one of the guests, you know, do you think the clubs would have anticipated such a reaction? And I just, you know, this has been bubbling up for a long time, hasn't it? You know,
it certainly has.
Those announcements yesterday, they weren't off the cuff. You know, these were, you know, the clubs knew what UEFA were going to say. The clubs knew what FIFA were going to say. The Premier League knew what the clubs were doing. Everybody knew what was happening. And yet they're still, you know, these clubs have the arrogance to say, you know, to go up against, you know, their own game, their own people, their fellow Premier League clubs. It's just embarrassing. It's really, really, really embarrassing. And the problem now is, you know, a lot of Liverpool fans, you know, rightly or wrongly, gave them the benefit of the doubt over, you know, the furlough, you know, gaff, for example, and said, well, you know, they made a mistake and they changed their mind, and you know, they listened, and you know, so we're all good. But I struggle with how they come back from this in terms of the trust, yeah, that they must have, you know, that they have lost.
They don't.
Well,
yeah, not with me anyway. I mean, I look, we've got to have a grown-up conversation here as well. And Steve is right. Like, whatever happens here, if they back down, look, we'll be happy they've backed down. Don't get me wrong. We'll be happy that our club remains in the Premier League and in the proper European competition. But I don't know if you've seen this, Steve, but at halftime tonight, the real kick in the nuts for me came with a statement released that these breakaway clubs have decided that they're going to carry the Champions Leagues over with them into this new Super League.
Well, I saw somebody tweet that. I mean, was that actually official? You know, yeah. There's a lot of stuff being tweeted, aren't there? You know, there's a lot of mischief making at the moment. So, you know, there's a few things that pop up that maybe we need to just see, you know, how the dust settles on them a little bit. But it's just, I just don't really know how, you know, how we've got to this position.
It kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it? Like we were sitting around yesterday and we thought, gents, that look, let's recap. I've got a recap in front of me, so let's go through it for people that don't know what's happening now. It's looking like the 12 participating clubs will be booted out of their domestic competitions. This is going to get funding from JP Morgan, an American investment bank, who will invest circa around £4.6 billion in the competition. The chairman of the new bullshit Super League is going to be Florentino Perez of Real Madrid. Vice chairmans are going to be Stan Kroenke, Angra Agnelli, John W. Henry, and Joel Glazer. And then, look, what stinks about this for me, Jack, and I'll come to you on it, and we know more, and we'll go more. There's 3.5 billion television revenue, apparently, from DAZN, who are willing to broadcast it. But what kills me here, gents, is Premier League's never been stronger. The English clubs have never been in a better position. Barcelona, Real Madrid were circling the drain. Italian football clubs hadn't got the financial power they once had. So we can understand the greed and self-serving nature of that. But for us, Jack, for the Glazers and Liverpool especially, because look, let's face it, we should be the ones who check these other clubs. We should be the ones who stand forward as bastions of the protectors of the game. But they haven't. They've cowered and they've gone behind capitalism again. So I can understand the greed and the self-serving nature of Florentino Perez and some of these other clubs who are struggling to pay the wages and struggling through their own financial mismanagement. But for our Premier League clubs, mate, it just feels like we've been stabbed in the back.
The thing I can't understand is what makes the Premier League the best league in the world. It's the competitiveness of it. And what is this new Super League trying to get rid of? Competitiveness in a sport that, thrives on that. And, we're talking about a working class sport, and it's been taken over by greed, by money, by capitalists. And it's disgusting. I said before at the start, Craig, when you asked my thoughts, we've let billionaires get away with too much for too long, and this is the final nail in the coffin. This is the beginning of the end of football. And we were speaking earlier on the Mundo Sporto podcast about ways that we can prevent this, but we alone can't prevent this. As fans can shout from the rooftops about this and kick off all we want, but we need the backing of coaches and we need the backing of players, and that's why I was delighted with Jurgen Klopp. I didn't have any doubts that he would do what he did tonight, but the statement he made prior to the game this evening was a big one. Don't underestimate that. He did it in a professional way, as he always does, and he came out and he put our owners under the bus. And you know what? Absolutely fair play. Hats off to him, because we're going to need the support of players and coaches across the world with our fight against this European Super League. We really are.
Steve,
the thing is, sorry, just to come in on all that. The worrying thing is, and a few people are saying it in the comments, this is, in a sense, it was a surprise, but in another sense, it wasn't, because it's been mooted for a long time, hasn't it? The idea of a European Super League. So you fight against this one, there's a tide going in that direction, isn't there? And you fight against this one, and the next one comes along, and the next one comes along, and it's going in a way where critics would have kind of argued this has been going ever since 1991, 92. The Premier League came along. The impact of money and the rich getting richer, the self-serving interests of the top clubs only looking after each other. But actually, the problem is a lot wider than that, isn't it? That's what annoyed me about the silly like Leeds t-shirts and the banners tonight. Don't think for a second they wouldn't have jumped at it, given half a chance as well. Most of the Premier League clubs would, particularly the ones that are owned by owners or companies, foreign ownership, who don't really understand it, and don't think for a second that these other clubs wouldn't have jumped and hightailed up into this European Super League given the chance. I mean, that's not defending Liverpool at all, but it's just the problem is why it isn't just these big six. It's and we're going to get these other clubs making these lovely gestures. We're actually already getting a bit of a PR thing, aren't we, at the moment? You see
Milner's just come out there. Connor's just put a comment across the bottom of the screen saying, I think the same as everybody. He doesn't want it to happen. And I fully expected James Milner to come out and call it as it is, Steve, because, he's a pro that's 35 years of age, kind of got nothing to lose, can speak honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fan as well, isn't he? He's a football fan and he gets it. He knows how important the lower leagues are and in the football pyramid and the support that the money. What I sort of don't get is did these clubs just, given that they knew everyone knew what was happening and the Premier League knew what was happening, they must have known that the second they announced it, UEFA would come out with a statement that I'm sure they had all seen before, and they would have known that potentially you're getting booted out of your own league, getting booted out of the Champions League, all that kind of thing. Surely just take a breath and just that cannot have been the objective of this. They wouldn't have wanted to leave the Premier League. They wouldn't want to leave the FA Cup. They wouldn't want to.
Did you see Kaveh Solokol earlier on Sky? He spoke to an unnamed person from a background or from a board level of one of the clubs, and the feedback was it's not war, it's nuclear war, and they don't care about the backlash. They want more money, less football, and they see that this is a way to maximize revenues and profits. And and I hate to use the phrase Americanization, gents, but that's what this is. They don't understand the culture. There's a cultural clash here. Relegation promotion is something that American owners of clubs, because I don't want to blame it on the fans, it's not normal to them. It's not second nature to them. It's the sporting rivalry and the fairy tale stories are what makes football so beautiful. So I don't know which one of you guys wants to come in first on this one, but I just want your take on that NBA style. Jack, you're a basketball fan. Make that NBA style model appeal to you?
Nah, not with football. The beauty of this game is it's not like the NBA and it's not like the NFL. It's a complete different spectacle. And that's what annoys me about this. Everything these days, if something works, they have to change other things to match that. No, football is so great because it's always been like this. It's a working class sport that has been so great because it's followed its roots. And, one thing I want to bring up is that, I don't just blame the clubs for their greed. The top six was created by the media, and the media have to take some responsibility for this too. You've seen the narrative of Sky Sports today and other big media companies who are, clearly against this, and they're showing that it's, a fight between the fans and the clubs. But the media are as much to blame. They've pumped as much money into football. They're billionaires too. They created this top six. And you've seen with the likes of BT Sport, their statement today, they took the Champions League away from, terrestrial television. So, this has been coming for years. It absolutely has. But, I didn't expect this in the way it's come. And I keep saying today, they've taken advantage of this pandemic. If you think they do this and they make this decision overnight in the middle of a season, when there are fans in the stadium, on the eve of a game between Liverpool and Leeds, the massive game for the top four in a packed Ellen Road, there is no way they would do that. No way. And it shows how spineless and cowardly these clubs and these owners are to do this when the fans can't go into stadiums and can't protest correctly because of COVID. And it is absolutely disgusting. It really, really is.
Steve, I want to bring you back 5 years ago, mate, to a similar scenario where there was a talk about this breakaway league and our owners flirted with it. And it was a piece on the Echo today that I read that said the end of it was, we understand, lesson learned, won't happen again. Yeah, here we are, mate, 5 years on.
Oh, yeah, goodness. I mean, I guess money talks, doesn't it? I mean, Jack says it's a working class sport. It hasn't been a working class sport for 30 years, has it?
That's the roots of it, Steve. It should always be working class sport.
But it's not. This isn't the point. We're not at the point where it's like stop being a working class sport now.
For years, Steve, for years, it's about.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that, but it's not like. There's a bit. Somebody made the point on 5 Live this morning on the radio that, as fans, and again, I'm not defending the clubs at all, but as fans, we've sort of danced with the devil a bit, haven't we? We've embraced all the money coming in. We've embraced all the commercial side. We've embraced all the money that Sky have pumped in, all the razzmatazz around football. And we've said it's great, while our teams were winning stuff. City fans, they've loved the money coming in. We've loved, spending big on players the last 2 or 3 years, and it's got us, Premier League or Champions League. So to a degree, we're all complicit in the direction of travel for football. It's not, it's not an overnight thing. This has been, for years and years and years, this has been going this way. But now we've got this like real tipping point where, they've taken it too far. And like I was saying at the start, I really don't know where we go from here. I really don't, because my feeling is that there's absolutely no way the Super League's happening. Like, I just don't think there's any way it's happening.
I think we're too far gone for that. I think we're too far gone for a use.
I'm with Steve. I think we are. I don't see how I think this will become political. I think this will go way above just businesses. I think I can see levies and taxes and issues around immigration and football visas. I can see so many things that can be put up as obstacles.
The issue is, and though I am praying that is the case, then either way we'll get punished for this. And then if this doesn't happen, we've been punished for something absolutely needless and pathetic. And part of me hopes that they throw the book at FSG and they try and keep the clubs out of it and just find the owners that have made these ludicrous decisions.
Here's a comment that I want to put to you guys. As an alternative for this Super League, how would you feel about all the top 5 domestic leagues merged into a single pyramid of promotion and relegation? I think it's still an elitist thing. But as Steve rightly pointed out, I mean, we're taking the moral high ground on this as fans who have benefited from the financial side of football, as the fans of a big club who have benefited. But I also want to give our fans credit because we're willing to say no, because it would be easy, Steve, for us to sit here and just take this and run.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I struggle with the very notion of anything. I love these games against Barcelona or Real Madrid because they come along once a year, don't they? And they're a big spectacle, and they're the matches with the high stakes for the big prizes. I also love playing Macclesfield Town on a Wednesday night, in the FA Cup third round. Just as much. I love. That's what I grew up on. My first ever football match was in like 1987, going to watch Crewe versus Bury. Crewe won 2-0. I just absolutely fell in love with live football, and it was dirty and it stank of meat pies and it was dirty and horrible, but it was wonderful. And that's if we get away from that and we get into this mindset of it's only the big clubs. Well, that comment talked about the merging the top 5 leagues. You're still going to have the majority of your season spent traveling all over Europe playing big clubs. That's never going to work for domestic cup competitions, is it? Which are still massively important, particularly to the pyramid. As we've said, it's not all about the top top of the top division, and it's that's the other point, isn't it? And I see a few people have been mentioning the knock-on effect, and actually a few friends of mine are good mates of mine in like WhatsApp groups. They're like Leeds fans or Villa fans, and they're like, good riddance to you. And I said to them, well, it's fine, but like, do you think the money comes in if the top 6 aren't there? Like, it just doesn't, does it? It might be nice to have this idea of a Premier League without these big rich take all the money clubs, but actually they're the ones that generate the big money, and that's kind of what's caused the problem in the first place, hasn't it? Because they know their value, and that's why they want more money. So I don't know where we go. I really
let's break it down then. Let's look at it from both sides. Let's look at it if we can rescue the situation, and let's look if we can't. So let's start with the negative side, which we see as not being able to rescue it. So the European Super League takes place. How long is it going to be, Jack, before we see Liverpool playing games in Dubai, America, Canada, Hong Kong? How long before? I mean, the worst case scenario here is that literally the club gets uprooted out of England, full on NFL style, and dragged to another place. Like, there is that. What time scales do we have, or what times will the games be at? Will the zone be it? Will the zone be the end of it? Dude, is there any benefit to owners investing in their squads if they know that they've no relegation out of this competition? There's so many questions.
That's the next step, isn't it, Craig? I've seen people today say it'll be a couple of years, but it'll be a couple of months. It really will, because these people don't care. You've seen the quotes today. They've called us legacy fans. They're after new fans from around the world, different parts of the world. They want to appeal to everyone. They don't respect what they've already got. They've turned us into customers. For years we've known that football is becoming more and more of a business. I'm studying that, for fuck's sake. It is. But at the end of the day, we're in a situation where this decision overnight, they've completely turned it into a franchise. And it's just I can't. Honestly, I am sick to the death of this already, and we're going to hear a lot more over the coming days because of how quickly this has happened already. And I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot. Infantino has been talking about something like this since 2009. So it's not something that has come out of the blue. Of course it's not. But I just think the timing of it and everything as well is an absolute disgrace. We're in the middle of the global pandemic, but throughout this, football has become a pandemic in itself. It really, really has. The game is well and truly going down the pan. And for me, this is the final straw, and it just shows that the clubs don't care about the fans. And Steve's absolutely right. I do think the smaller clubs would have the majority of smaller clubs would have jumped at the gun too, to do this if they had the opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think the top six are always going to be more at fault, because the more money you get, the greedier you become.
So, Steve, for you, it goes ahead. Where are we a year or two down the line?
I think I can't get my head around if everyone like sticks to their guns, as we stand now, you're going to have these 20 clubs or these 15 and then 5 more, however that's going to work, but these 15 or whatever in their own Super League, not playing in their domestic countries, and their players potentially not playing international football. It's just not going to happen. I can't believe that is a situation that anybody will consider to be a reasonable outcome. Somebody, and I don't know where this is going to come from, but someone is going to back down in this.
We've already heard murmurings, haven't we, of Chelsea and City potentially reconsidering their position.
That's the. I mean, Matt Law from the Daily Telegraph tweeted that earlier, that he'd heard that City and Chelsea, only found out about it last week. Honestly, if you believe that, you believe anything. There's no way that they've not been involved in, the chat. This chat's been around for years. There's no way they found out about it last week. That's nonsense. So, yeah, I suspect that's probably just, the start of a potential climb down. And I think once one goes, then it might, all collapse. But I can't get my head around a situation where nobody backs down, and the end result is that these clubs are not playing domestic football. I can't see that happening at all.
Here's a good point. I suppose if any positive can be taken away from this, it doesn't happen, the government will realise the power these owners have and maybe try and do something for the betterment of the game. Can you see that happening, Jack? Can you see maybe this being a tip? I know we're all envious right now of the 40 or the 50+1 German model, but can this be saved? Are the clubs too valuable now? Was the time to do this when maybe we're worth 200 and something million and not 2.6 billion?
I'd love that to happen, but I can't see it. And the simple reason is, that these multi-billion-pound businessmen have too much money. And we saw during the pandemic how desperate the government were to get football back, because the amount of money it pumps into, the whole world and our economy. But yeah, something needs to be done. As I say, the whole reason the German clubs aren't too involved in this is because they're sustainable, and they're mostly ran by their fans. And they were active over the last few years when football has been going the wrong way, and they've made steps in the right direction to support the supporters. And the German clubs now are quite rightly being commended for their actions. And Borussia Dortmund coming out today, they're not scared about being left behind. They've come out and they've said no, they don't want to be a part of it. They've put the fans first. And that's what every club should do. We've said the slogan for years: football is nothing without fans. These businessmen, they're desperate for it to become something. But one thing I can't stand is I've watched my football club tonight, and it's just not been the same feeling. And it's not the players' fault, it's not the coach's fault, it's nothing. That's what American billion-pound businessmen have done to my football club. And whether we won 20-0 tonight or lost 8-0, I would have still had the same bitter, sick feeling in my stomach because of the actions off the field today. And that shouldn't be allowed in football. It shouldn't be allowed that you can get businessmen coming in and treating clubs like this. And what sickens me as well is this has been brought up today because of it's happening at the top of the game, but you look at it happened lower down in the football pyramid the last few years as well. You look at Bury and Macclesfield, they're clubs that haven't been protected, and they've allowed external factors and external businessmen to come in and completely destroy their football clubs. And I feel like it's completely different what's going on now and that, but we're seeing owners coming in and ruining football clubs and ruining the way we want the game to be played far too frequently. And when it's a game for the fans, when it's a working class sport, and I know Steve doesn't think it is anymore, but when the roots of football are the working class sport, and the fans are so desperate for it to still be that, I think it's an absolute disgrace. I think it's farcical, and I am just praying that the government and the authorities and everyone can block this, because it's a disaster for the sport.
If we look at it, Steve, from the positive spin, and let's say it doesn't get off the ground, like we both think deep down that this is a no-runner. I mean, how do these owners, and I don't care about the Spanish and Italian clubs, how do these English Premier League club owners rescue this from a PR perspective? Is there any rescue in it, or is it the old adage of you can treat football fans how you want and they'll keep coming back for more?
I don't know. I mean, you look at United as an example. They've had owners that they absolutely detest, for quite a number of years now, and they don't seem to give a monkeys, do they? The owners don't care. It bounces off them like water off a duck's back. I suspect that all these owners we're talking about, and it's not just Americans. It's the guys at City, Abramovich at Chelsea. All these owners. I suspect I'm not saying here they don't care, even the evidence suggests they don't. But I don't think they. I think they have the courage of their convictions, and if they believed in the right, what they were doing, I don't think that fan power is going to make a difference. So, I suspect the way this is going to play out, either side will back down, either we'll get a slightly different, Champions League where the bigger clubs get a bit closer to what they want. I've no doubt. I'll be amazed if they took the step of booting, these big six clubs out of the Premier League, and we're going to kind of end up, not far off from where we started, but with this whole trust, particularly from Liverpool point of view, trust in the owners that we thought had the best interest of the club in mind, gone. But then I suspect they won't really give them monkeys anyway. They've proved they don't really care, haven't they? So they'll just crack on, and there'll be some fans that will hold a grudge, and there'll probably be some fans at the next big trophy they'll jump back on board again.
Gents, before I move on, I just want to say there's about roughly 5,000 people live in the chat right now. We're less than 3,000 subscribers away from hitting the magic milestone of 100,000. If you guys have a second, you want to support, keep giving us a voice for what we're doing. Your say is always welcome on this channel. We are a community channel. Do hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. Jack, there's a good comment here that, I wouldn't have thought of this, but I want to get up. It says, with no fans/competition, no local fans/competition and other sources of income, why can't an owner move the club to another country? For an example of here's of tax benefits. Again, we kind of touched on it earlier, Jack.
I don't know what to say about all this. I have been brought up on the term, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And yes, I believe football is breaking, and there are a lot of problems with the modern game. I don't think this is the way of fixing it at all. And there's one thing that is no doubt in my mind, and that's even if this European Super League doesn't happen, there will be big reforms to football. And we've seen the Champions League one today. I absolutely don't mind this new Champions League model. I think it looks all right. But yeah, I don't think, the football as we know it now won't be like this for years. Well, in the next few years, that's for sure.
The real sad thing here, Steve, is that a couple of things. I don't like being called a legacy fan, and I'm sure you don't either. But I mean, to see a compromise that had been reached because UEFA understood that there was more commercial money to be extracted and that some clubs held some power. So there was an agreement reached behind the scenes, and we were supposed to have an announcement today about, as Jack said, this new revitalized Swiss model of the Champions League. And now here we are, none the wiser on that, and none the wiser about where the future of the game lies.
Yeah, I don't like it's been a bit uncomfortable, hasn't it, watching UEFA be this kind of knight in shining armor, because they're...
And PSG, that's really stuck with me as well.
Yeah, I mean, UEFA are fairly useless, aren't they? And they've taken the opportunity to kind of, trying to be the sort of bastion of virtue and good behaviour. I mean, it's been a thing for years, hasn't it, that the top clubs have felt like they haven't got, the piece of the pie they deserve, and then the argument against that is, well, if you get, what you feel you deserve, then you just keep getting richer and richer and richer, and the gap between rich and poor gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which they seem to have no problem with, and that's at the root of all this. It's just all kinds of messed up, isn't it? Just every direction you look, the solution, like I say, we've come, 30 years or whatever since the Premier League came about, and it's been a steady progression to this point. And the German model is great. In Germany, it hasn't really led to a very competitive league, though, has it? There's a lot of clubs in our league that spend big money, lower down, which make it into a really competitive league where anybody can beat anybody. And that's not the case in Germany with fan ownership. That's what I mean. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how we get out of this mess, but I don't know how we get the game that we want anymore, given the direction of travel and given how far we've come. I don't know how we row back on 30 years of money and owners and increasingly being run like a business.
Here's a question. It's a fair question as well. What do you guys think happens if this league falls through? Which 2 out of 3 of us do believe will happen, by the way. And Jack hopes it'll happen, I think is fair to say. Whether he believes it or not, I think we all hope it falls through. How do the teams that were in it get dealt with? I mean, we've seen Gary Neville, Jack, as an example, kind of say that he'd like to see the clubs relegated or dock points and given huge fines. And I think he's on the right track.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And, if that does happen, I would not be against it whatsoever. And one of the teams involved is our club. And I hope it encourages more of us fans to get on the back of the owners for this ludicrous decision. Because as Jurgen Klopp and a lot of the players have come out and said tonight, this isn't a decision by the whole club. This is a decision by our greedy owners. And, there should be no way back from any of the owners of these football clubs, particularly Liverpool and Manchester United on this, because, they've been figureheads of this decision-making process. And for me, they should have the book thrown at them. They really, really should. And, if the Premier League can block takeovers of Newcastle United because of, the people trying to take them over, can they not force clubs to be sold by their current owners? It's an interesting talking point to be had, but it's going to be a long process. It's going to go through loads of different courts. It's going to be years before we find out what's going to happen to football, in my opinion. But yeah,
See, for somebody who comes from a journalistic background, who has, some good sources from your time at the BBC and your WhatsApp groups and your mates, did this come as a shock within the industry, mate, to your journalist friends?
Yeah, I think so. No, I mean, not that I'm aware of. No, but I mean, I've heard nothing about it until now. It's just an extraordinary thing, isn't it? I mean, like we said earlier on, it's something that's been kind of mooted and knocking about for a few years. I just the idea of I like the principle of relegating them. I like the principle of chucking the book at them. The clubs, the reason the clubs have done what they've done, knowing what UEFA would say, knowing what the Premier League would say, the reason they've done what they've done is because they know, the cards they've got, don't they? They know exactly how powerful they are. They know exactly how much of the Sky money depends on their involvement in the Premier League. They know that. They know that. That's why they've made the play they've made, because they know their value, and the Premier League know their value. Everybody knows the value of those clubs in terms of broadcasting contracts and all that kind of thing. And so, it's a lovely idea to chuck the book at them, but in terms of the future of the game, you don't want to do that, do you? Because then, like I said, the broadcasting contracts are worth less, and the money that goes down to the lower leagues is less, and it all, we don't achieve anything by doing that, other than making a point of them. But I'm not saying that I disagree with it. I'm just saying, practically, I just wouldn't imagine the Premier League would want to do that.
What did you guys make of the email sent around from Billy Hogan this morning? I think it was around 8:30, somewhere around that time, that was just basically filling in loyal staff that work at the club, and I presume, higher ups as well, some people that didn't know what was going on. What did you make of that being broken after this news had broken late last night? And we were all hanging around waiting for that statement released from the 12 clubs, and we were wondering, as 9:30 came and went, 10:30 came and went, were they backtracking? Were they scrambling behind the scenes after seeing fan reaction? And I just want to know, Jack, I'll come to you first, what your thoughts were on that email from Billy Hogan.
Like most of it, it's a disgrace, isn't it? It does. This whole thing seems like a real power play in making sure that we're always part of the elite clubs in Europe, and that's just not how football works. We've seen the demise of Arsenal in recent years. We've seen teams like Leicester come through and look like they're going to break into the top six. And it's just like Klopp said earlier. The beauty of football is knowing that West Ham are so close to top four this year, and they might get top four. As Liverpool fans, they're our competition. We hope they don't, but that's football. And if they do, they get Champions League on merit. And the thought that, the future of European competitions, as Hogan said in his email today, is this way, just completely takes the game away from what it's always been for me. And, I just think that is one of, Hogan is one of many board members of these 6 clubs today who have really, really made hits of themselves with some of the things they've said. I can't sit back and just listen to some of the things that have been said today. The whole legacy fans, the whole nuclear war on football that we're hearing that they're trying to start, the whole fact that some board member has told Sky Sports apparently that at the end of the day, he thinks that from a business perspective, for him, it's profit first and then the future of the game second. It's not what football's all about. Come on.
That's what it's been like that for ages, though, mate. It's been like that for years.
And Steve, I honestly get your point. I honestly do. But there's always still been, it's still been there, The game has still been there. Whereas, as I keep saying, this is the final nail in the coffin. This is the final straw. This is a big, big sucker punch. And whether or not the game's been going that way for years, whether or not you think it has been like that for years, it hasn't been as bad as what it is about to be.
No, I understand. I understand that. I said it on, and this is a massive tipping point. But this is kind of what I'm I said before that we're all kind of complicit in the way the direction of travel this has been going for years, and we haven't done anything about it. Government's not done anything. Us as fans haven't made a strong enough stand because we've been happy to win the trophies and get the big players. And
we've been greedy. Let's be honest. We've been fat cats sitting at the top of the table. We've been spoiled as Liverpool fans, as United fans, as City fans.
We look at like Portsmouth. Portsmouth's owners. Going back 10, 15 years, absolute. Cowboys just came in. Tried to make a quick profit, reached the FA Cup, won the FA Cup. Sorry. And then they've just tumbled down the leagues because it was just a complete money making thing. It's been going on for years, and no one has stopped it because we've been too happy to win the trophies, and we've been too happy to take the love the kind of product that it produced. I don't think when Kaveh Solikov said that on Sky, it didn't surprise me. It's not a surprising thing to hear, is it? I mean, no one buys a football club for a passion project, do they? They buy it because it's an investment. They buy it because they're going to make money out of it, and that's John Henry, and that's the Glazers, that's whoever you want to, refer to. It's the way it's been ever since it started to become, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. We got the big owners coming in.
What do you think of this one, gents? And I have a couple of points on that Billy Hogan email that I'm going to come back to in a second. But again, folks, please do keep hitting that subscribe button, dropping likes on the videos. We are closing in on that target. So this gentleman says the players will embrace the European Super League. In US sport, there are average players making 25 mil a year. Top Premier League salaries 250k a week or 13 mil a year. Money thoughts. Now, there are some points to that, Steve, that we might not want to admit are true, but there are. I would also argue that in a lot of American sports where this person says players are making X amount a year, the careers are very short. So if you're looking at the average NFL career or, the time at the top level is extremely limited if you're lucky enough to get there. Now, money does talk, but we have to come to a tipping point. And I think Steve touched on a really good point. We've sat back, and Jack, you touched on it earlier. We've lamented Bury. We've talked about Portsmouth. We've seen this come. We've seen clubs fall, but it wasn't us. It's almost like a war in another country where you're watching the news and you've got sympathy, but it's not happening in your house. It's not happening outside your door. So it doesn't have that same impact. Well, now the big boys are suffering, or our fan bases are at least suffering. And it's not a nice taste, is it, gents? Let's be honest. It's not nice to be on the end of this.
No, it's not. It's not at all. That last comment that you put up was actually quite interesting. It's something that I was chatting to a friend about earlier. And I think international football means a lot to players, doesn't it? And if they were, not able to play for their country, that would be massive. I don't know them. You'd have to ask them, but I imagine there'd be a lot of players where the extra couple of million a year, on top of the 10 million a year they already get, or whatever it is, wouldn't be enough to make them want to do something that meant they couldn't play international football. So. But then that's they're talking about lawyers challenging all that, and there was a big time lawyer quoted that said like UEFA haven't got a hope in hell of winning that case. This is kind of this is why the clubs have got all the power, and this is why they're trying to do what they're trying to do. So
I said a second ago, I had a couple, and I will come to you in a second, Jack, by the way, to readdress that issue. I just want to. A couple of points I pulled from Billy Hogan's email. One, I would love to be on this town hall that's supposedly taking place tomorrow that he spoke about, by the way. I'd love to know this town hall. It must be only with members of the inner sanctum, or at least employees of the football club, because he did say that they'll be holding a town hall tomorrow. If that's open to fan groups, then he's lucky it's going to be on Zoom, put it that way. But the second part was, and I call me cynical here, but I don't think it's any accident that Peter Moore has left his role. I think Peter Moore knew this was coming. And as somebody who understands the game, as a Red, as a PR wizard, he legged it. He legged it because he saw what was coming down the line. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the first thing I did last night was put that in, a WhatsApp chat. I don't think Peter Moore would have let this happen. And we're told that he left because of other things, but like we've all alluded to, and like a lot of people know, this has been in the pipeline for years, and he would have been involved in conversations. He wouldn't have been happy in those conversations, and he would have been one of the people that were against that, involved in the hierarchy at Liverpool, because he got us, because he understood us as supporters, and that's something that the club have struggled with since he left. We turned a blind eye to the furlough disaster that happened, when we were told that it was just a mistake, and that they understood, and that we thought they did the right thing in making a U-turn. But then time and time again, they make errors like this. They tried to trademark the word Liverpool, and we just turned a blind eye to it. They're so greedy. They really, really are. And for me, like you, Steve, I've backed FSG. I really have. And every mistake they've made, I've said, look, it's a mistake. All owners make mistakes. But look at the good they've done to the club. You can't go back on this. You really can't. And for me, I can't see a way back for FSG and the board after this, because it's a disgraceful mood, and they have completely discredited us as supporters. They really have.
What do you think, Steve, from the Peter Moore perspective?
Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty savvy guy, and like you said, he's a massive Red. He's a supporter first and foremost, isn't he? So, quite possibly you're right. Let me put something to you guys then. As I said, I think the owners don't give us stuff, but they're not going to sell the club because we tell them to sell the club. So and who buys a club that's worth the amount Liverpool are worth now? Massive money, right? So say we row back from this, or UEFA row back from this, whatever. Somebody rows back, we end up in a revamped a European competition. We end up back in the Premier League, or stay in the Premier League, but the owners are still the same. What's your Jack? I want to give you a cuddle. You're looking so down. What's your how do you then look at you as a Liverpool supporter? Are you gonna just still go and watch them? How does it go from here?
I would really struggle with getting behind this. I really would. I would be bored. I would feel disillusioned. How can I go and buy the shirts, buy merchandise, pump money into a football club that gives no single shit about me?
See this quote from Klopp going across the bottom of the screen there that Connor put in? Connor, let that go around again, mate. So this coming in from Jurgen Klopp now. I heard today that I will resign, but I feel responsible for the team, which was always going to happen. He was always going to say that, for the club and for the relationship we have with each other or with our fans. I will try to sort it somehow.
He got stitched up tonight, didn't he? He got royally stitched up. Being the first manager to get be put up, and then felt sorry for the players as well. Getting booed and getting chanted at and everything when they arrived at the ground. They've done absolutely nothing wrong.
Absolutely nothing at all. The players, nothing. The management, the staff, those that are working at the cafe at Anfield, the club shop, nothing to do with them.
Absolutely nothing, and they're all, they're all going to suffer from this, and they must be, they're all on social media, aren't they? They, some guys, they'll be aware of, the way that the fans are feeling about this, and I do, I do believe that a lot of them are, made of the right stuff, and they'll be feeling it because they, I know they're rich footballers, but some of the players at Liverpool get it. I really think they do, and they'll be feeling it, and I feel massively sorry for them. And like I said at the start, one of the first things I said, if he really did only find out about it yesterday, I mean, that is just extraordinary, isn't it? That's extraordinary.
Yeah, I even seen Solskjaer yesterday coming off the pitch after United's win. Go from 1-1, they get the 3-1 win at the end. He comes off the pitch and boom, he's hit with this. I mean, You've got to feel for them. These are people who are there as employees of the club. In Jurgen Klopp's case, have given us nights we'll never forget, brought us the Holy Grail, and our owners have been responsible for that in some way, which is why I think we got some good grades for them. We'd allowed the mistakes as a learning process, but it's their silence, Steve, for me right now, that speaks volumes more than anything else. I mean, grow a pair and come even from your apartment or your loft or whatever it is in Boston, and just make a statement or make a video. Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of what I do a lot of work in PR and stuff, and the whole thing's that's the arrogance I was talking about earlier. That there's no effort to. They would have known. They're pretty savvy guys. They have fans who advise them. They have they know what goes on. They know exactly the reaction this was going to get. They can't not have done. And they've still gone ahead with it, and then they haven't. Normally when you get an unpopular decision, you get people coming out, and saying, "Well, just give us a second. We'll explain why this is a good idea. Just let us just give us a minute." And I was thinking that yesterday. I was thinking, is there something I'm missing here? Is there something? Is it not as bad as we think? And is there something I'm missing? And then you hear nothing, 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 and then you just come to the conclusion that it probably is every bit as bad as you think. And they just don't know what to say because I don't know if there's a kind of a decision across all 12 clubs to, say nothing or I mean, goodness only knows. This is something doesn't really make sense to me. It just something isn't right. If it was something that they were all confident about and all, they thought was going to happen, we'd be getting the PR bombardment. We'd be getting it left, right, and centre.
I want to just give you guys a chance before we finish up, because I know it's getting late. If you could sit down, Jack, right now in front of John W. Henry and sit across from him, person to person, in a private room, what would you say to him?
I'd give him a firm left hook, mate. That's what I'd do. That's what I feel right now. You know, it's there'd be strong words in that room, that's for sure. It's disappointing. It really is, because, as I say, and as Steve said before, you know, I've been a person that stuck up for FSG time and time again. And I know Klopp said in his comments there, once again, remained professional as always. But, you know, as a fan, to hear some of the things that have been said today is just, it's just like when Steve asked that question before, and it's talking about finding a way back. I'll always love Liverpool Football Club. Of course I will. You know, today I still watched the game. It didn't feel the same, but I still watched the game because I love the club. I love the city. I love the players. I love Jurgen Klopp. You know, we are so lucky to have him. But our owners right now are just dragging our name under all kinds of issues. And, you know, it's just a disgrace. It really is. And, you know, we have supporters groups and we have loads of different things in the modern game where fans can have some kind of voice. And, you know, it was brilliant to see the Spine Cop today say that they're removing flags from the Kop and stuff like that. But, you know, I'm just appalled that something like this has been able to happen at football clubs without them consulting the manager of the football club, without them consulting the players, without them consulting the fans, and just a decision made by businessmen. I think it's an absolute disgrace. And, you know, I know, as I said before, I know Klopp has been very professional about it, but I know I and many other fans wouldn't be. And, you know, I would sit there in that boardroom and tell John Henry exactly how much of a twat I think he is.
Steve, just before I come to you, a thing at the bottom of the screen there, at a meeting tomorrow that we knew was taking place with Premier League stakeholders, the other teams are set to agree to demand that the 6 breakaway clubs leave the Premier League at the end of the season. Now, they have every right to do that. They've every right to feel betrayed. They've every right to speak out. But there also has to be an option of a route back, because we can't just push them towards this. We have to make it as difficult as possible for this to happen. But what would you say to John W. Henry, apart from why? What would you say to him?
Do you know when your parents pull you aside and they say they're not angry, they're just you're very disappointed? Because, you know, I feel like we trusted them. You know, I just feel very let down. I feel, you know, duped, like I said earlier on. I think that's what I say. I said, like, you know, we trusted you. We trusted you with something that's incredibly important to us, and you told us all the right things. And then it's not just us they've sold at the river. It's English football, and you know, I don't really care much for Arsenal and Tottenham and, you know, Chelsea and City and new money, but United and Arsenal United and Liverpool are massively important to English football, and we've got a responsibility to, you know, support the whole pyramid, you know, the whole of the game. And you know, we've been let down, but everyone else is being let down as well by arrogance and greed and you know, just a desire to, you know, to get their own way and you know, make even more money on top of, you know, the ridiculous sums they already make. So that's the thing for me. It's just the trust. You know, we trusted them with this club. We trusted them that they were going to do the right thing, you know, by us, by the important people, by us. And
I always look at these things and try and find some humour in a situation, because it's how I deal with grief. But when I look at Liverpool Football Club now, I think of that Life of Brian, and we're not the Judean People's Front, we're the People's Front of the Judea. That's exactly what I look at, and I see everything that should resemble what we love, but it just doesn't feel the same. As Jack said, watching that game tonight just didn't feel the same.
And John Henry's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
He is. He's a very naughty boy. And look, gents, I think we'll leave it there. To those people that have stuck with us, don't worry. We're going to continue on looking for answers, and we're going to continue to give you guys a voice and a platform. Thank you to Steve and Jack for jumping on so late at night after the game as well. It's been a weird 48 hours, folks, but we'll continue to try and make sense of it, find answers, and give you guys a platform. If you do want to keep supporting us, do hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video as well. I'll be back tomorrow with more stuff. To Mr. Bland, to Mr. Gill, thank you, gents. It's a very tough time, but we'll keep trying to do as best as we can, and hopefully over the next 48, 72 hours, this becomes a bit more apparent what's actually going to happen, and we'll have more to talk about. But look, folks, take care, be well, look after yourself, and lots of love.